today there was a new bill passed. And this bill still needs to go to the Senate, so it's not 100% final yet, but apparently it's fairly easy to get it through the Senate now because it's sort of basically 90% there. So yeah, and this bill was broken down into three parts. So one's Medicare, clean energy, and a tax bill. That's basically the three parts. The first one is the Medicare part of it, or healthcare. And wait, before we get there, the bill was called the Inflation Reduction Act. And sort of while we go through this, just keep that in your mind because I couldn't see anything on here that's got anything to do with inflation. So yeah, maybe I'm missing something, but yeah, let's see. So the first one is Medicare or healthcare. So the Federal Health Secretary basically now has the power to negotiate prices of certain drugs. Exactly what that means, because they put the word negotiate in there. So they don't set the prices, they negotiate the prices. So how much effect that will have is obviously anyone's guess. They say there will be 10 drugs for the year 2026 and 20 drugs for the year 2029. So this is not going to be an immediate effect. Obviously, there's still a lot of, I don't know if they're saying by 2026, there'll be a sudden bam, now it's 10 drugs that has this negotiated prices, or if it will be a build up until 2026. And they won't go over 10 drugs before 2026, and then they won't go over 20 drugs before 2029. Not sure, but I assume what they mean is that there's going to be, like initially they're going to choose 1 or 2 drugs now, and basically offer discounts or fixed rates on those. And these are mostly prescription drugs that they want to bring the prices down. And yeah, that'll obviously help the end consumer and people with that obviously have these prescription drugs. So that there might be obviously a change in inflation because it technically brings down your monthly expenses. So, but how exactly that'll fight inflation, I'm not sure. Because obviously these medical companies now, they're going to actually earn less. So they need to push up the prices of the other products. So that means for the rest of community, their prices will go up, which means inflation goes up because more people are affected now by the other products they need to raise. I don't know. So we'll have to see how that works. They've also put a $2,000 cap on out-of-pocket costs for prescription drugs, but this is only for people on Medicare. So if you're not on Medicare, you don't get that. And it'll be interesting to see who this impacts. I assume it will impact companies like Pfizer, Johnson & Johnson, and Lilly. It will probably affect their stock price. So their stock price most likely will go down. I assume, obviously, they will earn less of an income. So, yeah, it might be good to lessen your holdings in those companies. But yeah, the impact should be minimal right now. It's obviously a very distant future thing since they mentioned 2026. So I don't think it'll be a major shift in those companies at this moment. So the second part of the bill was clean energy or green energy or going green or however you want to phrase that. And there was 300 billion set aside for this. So there's two sort of areas that they're targeting inside clean energy, and one is transportation and the other one is electricity generation. So the electricity generation has got nothing to do with the grid. It's actually for solar. So if you want to install solar in your house, they're going to obviously give you some tax credit for that. So I think Enphase might actually benefit from this quite substantially because it's going to get more people to buy solar. And where they're going to go? Probably Enphase. So yeah, that's a good one to watch. And then the next part of it is tax credits for electric vehicles. Think Tesla. And possibly Ford now, Rivian, those companies, but most likely Tesla. Obviously going to get tax credit for an electric vehicle. How much exactly? I don't know. It is an interesting thing because Tesla's they're not struggling with a demand problem. They have a supply problem. So they can't make cars fast enough. There's enough people buying the cars. I mean, they've got back orders dating years. So a sudden uptick in demand technically won't make a difference to Tesla's bottom line unless they somehow get collect all the funds up front, so you pay everything on your vehicle now and you only get it in 2 years, then maybe obviously they'll collect more funds now, which means the stock price, it's justified for the stock price to go up. But the fundamentals of Tesla, technically this won't change it. Maybe on a longer term it will change it. It might still affect the stock price purely based on optimism, because obviously the US economy is more behind electric vehicles. Not that they weren't behind them, they're just more behind them now. So yeah, but that will have a bit of a more immediate effect. I think a lot of people will definitely try and switch to electric vehicles. And then the third part of the bill obviously is the tax bill. Now the tax bill is basically just targeting massive corporates. These are corporates with 1 billion or more income, or 300 billion in revenue. So it's really your Facebook, Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Amazon, the big boys. And basically what it comes down to is they must always pay a minimum of 15% tax. Exactly how this tax would be calculated, I'm not sure. What would be interesting is how it actually affects their stock price and how they would respond to it. So if it affects their stock price, it might mean that they actually, obviously their stock price might go down a bit. So the only problem is now you're targeting the big players in the S&P 500. And if their stock prices go down, the whole index goes down. And usually a lot of the sort of professional investors call them the generals. If they go down, the other stocks follow. It's not that they bring the index down. The other stocks literally also go down. So the whole index will go down. So that'll be interesting to see how this sort of affects them. Obviously, it depends on what the timelines of this is. If it is now, it's obviously not going to be good to do this during a recession, because then they might cut more costs, cut more jobs, maybe, because a lot of them, I think Apple and Google, they said they're not going to actually cut jobs, they're just slowing hiring, so maybe this will actually turn them to cut jobs. So another thing that might be that this might help, or problem that actually exists somewhere else that it might solve, is your monopoly problem. So you obviously have big monopolies, typically these people, Amazon, Apple, Google, Microsoft, that do sort of monopolize the market. If you try to open an online store, you're going to have to compete against Amazon, which is really difficult. It is almost impossible. But now, with this new tax bill, it might force them to if they want that benefit, to sort of split into smaller entities. And that kind of does fix the monopoly problem to some degree, because now it will also give investors like us a little bit more options as to where to put our money, because now it's not just Google. You might get Google Search, Google Ads, although they're kind of the same thing, YouTube, etc., etc. You might actually have certain divisions, which is each their own separate company, purely so that they fall below this 1 billion income threshold or 300 billion revenue, so that they don't have to pay that 15% tax. So yeah, that's basically what I was thinking might happen here. But if you look at all these things that I just mentioned, there's not a lot that's actually inflation reduction. I don't really see it bringing down inflation. But I was thinking maybe the actual, because obviously the regional act is much bigger. And then as it went through the voting process, it got a lot smaller. And these are sort of the end ones that survived the whole voting process. And this voting process, obviously, it's the Republicans versus Democrats. So maybe it was the Republicans that tried to remove the items that actually will reduce inflation, simply to cause the Democrats to fail so that the Democrats look more incapable. That's the only thing I can think of. So that obviously then the Democrats will get less votes. I don't know. I'm just speculating. This is merely a speculation. But yeah, so to see this as a win for Democrats, it is a little bit difficult. The only one I can actually see that might affect sort of the swing of votes on the next election is the Medicare stuff. I think if they can get as much drugs as possible to be negotiated in price before 2026, the better it's going to be, because then you're going to actually impact the quality of people's lives. because there's a fair amount of people that are on prescription drugs that have some sort of condition, and the price of these drugs, basically they spend almost their all income just on paying these drugs. And for them and their friends and family, this will be a major impact, because you're literally going to take their quality of life and you're going to lift it up. So that will be a good thing for the Biden administration. They will look a little bit more competent to the general population. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what the re-election is like. I know with Biden has definitely lost some voters during the last couple of months, but hey, maybe they'll get some back. We'll see. But yeah, if you like this video, remember to press the button. And if you want to see more, remember to subscribe. This is Steve. Until next time, ciao.